Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to jump on the webinar with us to review one of the FMCSA's most newest updates on changing crash codes to non-preventable crashes. I am your speaker today, Cameron Boots, the Director of Risk Engineering for Allied Insurance Brokers, which is a Gallagher company. And pretty unique times right now to be doing a webinar, but what better to do a webinar over the computer away from everybody than in person with a bunch of people as we wish we could have done at, let's say, an association event. But hey, we're taking advantage of what we can do now and getting the information to everybody in regards to this new update that's going to be very beneficial to business owners. A little bit about myself. As I said, I'm the Director of Risk Engineering with Allied Insurance Brokers, a Gallagher company. So my job really is I work with our clients and my specific clients to take advantage of risk opportunities to better themselves, to reduce incidents and get better pricing with insurance, as well as the background behind that is I am a certified safety professional by the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. So if there's any questions during this webinar, please feel free to type it in your text box, ask it. We'll try to get to it. If we don't get to it during the webinar, I will follow up personally to talk about it and get it answered. As well as feel free to, we're going to put my contact information at the end of the presentation. If you don't have it already, feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to discuss anything, not just this topic. So without further ado, let's get chugging along with this webinar. So on today's agenda, the first thing we're going to cover is CSA scoring. You hear this acronym a lot in regards to association meetings, whether it's the SCNRA, in regards to how you are being rated and scored in regards to the FMCSA. So we're going to cover that first. And then we are going to talk about specifically one of the new updates by the FMCSA, what is considered an eligible crash when it comes to preventable and non-preventable incidents. This is honestly, hearing this update and some of the results that you're going to see on this presentation, it excites us, and I'm sure it's going to excite you guys just as much, because with today's world of auto accidents, when you see the attorneys' billboards on the side of the road saying we'll get money for you if you got hit by a big truck, this is more ammunition for us, and we're going to dive into how that is ammunition and what we would be utilizing that for on your behalf. So that we're really excited to dive into that, and we're really excited with this update. Then we're going to touch for best practices for submitting a potential non-preventative crash to the FMCSA. We're going to walk you through how to do that, as well as we're going to follow up with some information to get in your hands to be able to know exactly how to do that, as well as our team will be available if an incident occurs to walk you through that as well. And then finally, how this new update impacts your business. We're going to dive into some specifics on that as far as how you can take advantage of that in other avenues of your business as well. So first off, what is CSA and SMS? Again, two acronyms you hear a lot. A lot of you are probably familiar with these, but in case you're not, CSA stands for Compliance, Safety, and Accountability. So it's FMCSA's Data-Driven Safety Compliance and Enforcement Program. And then SMS is the safety measurement system within the Compliance, Safety, and Accountability, which basically the FMCSA organizes the SMS safety measurement system data into 7 behavioral analysis and safety improvement categories. So this is what you call, another acronym, BASICS. You're going to see this term a lot associated with CSA and SMS, especially if you go to your own personal safety measurement system scoring page, which you can look that up on the FMCSA site. So let's dive in right now as far as what those basics are and how that's going to affect this new update. So there are 7 basics. Here they are right in front of you. Driving violations, vehicle maintenance, hours of service, controlled substance, hazardous materials compliance, driver fitness, and crash indicators. Now, what 6 of these 7 have in common, excluding the crash indicators, is they are all weighted differently. They have different weights and different severities of specific, let's say, driving violations or vehicle maintenance. So for example, if a taillight is out, that could have different weight than if you don't have your maintenance file up to date. So those 6 have it, and the crash indicator, which is what we're going to dive into because the specific update is affecting that, they don't necessarily have any weight. It's calculated differently. So as I said, there's not a weight assigned to the specific action, and how the crash indicator is calculated is by a specific formula, as you see down below. So it basically equals the total of time and severity weighted from an applicable crash or crashes divided by the average power units times the utilization factor. So when you look at this equation, or if you look at this formula, it's very similar to some OSHA formulas, like the total recordable incident rate or the DART rate. When I say relatable, it's the situation where number of power units in your fleet is going to affect that measurement, just like number of employees and employee hours are going to affect. So in hindsight, the more power units that you have, the less your crash indicator could be, or the more employee hours you have, the lower your TRIR is going to be. And again, both of those have been huge arguments in regards to, well, it seems like the bigger guy has the advantage over me, and the counter argument, well, yes, technically he does and he doesn't because he has more exposure than you. So it's an argument that's going back and forth. Everybody always makes the argument. Honestly, our opinion, it's going nowhere, just because the arguments from both sides are almost equal. So it's just, there's no update in regards to that changing. So we're going to roll with how both the TRIR and the crash indicators are calculated altogether. Now, the topic today is really how your crash indicator measurement is going to change, because now crashes are going to be viewed as preventable and non-preventable. So there was a study done, pilot program specifically, where the FMCSA reviewed crashes in the past 3 years. So they reviewed 5,600 crashes in the past 3 years, and 94% of those cases were not preventable by the driver or carrier. Now, that percentage is insane. I would understand, and honestly, I would think that this ruling would probably be updated or passed, even if it was 15 to 20% of accidents were not preventable. We're talking 94%, which comes out to 5,264 non-preventable crashes out of 5,600. As you can see, this is why the update's being made. So, what is an eligible crash in regards to being preventable versus being not preventable? So what we're going to show you next are specific examples that the FMCSA has put together, as well as we're going to provide these handouts in regards to what is an eligible crash, just so you guys have it on file in case you come across this scenario where you want to file and have a crash be non-preventable on your record. So we'll go through those now, and then we can follow up with any questions, because there's probably going to be a few that you're saying, wow, that seems like it's not preventable. Why is it on there? So we'll follow up with that at the end. So first, struck on side at rear examples. So these are 2 examples of an eligible crash. Both very similar crashes, just coming from different 5 to 7 position. But the vehicle that struck the commercial motor vehicle was operating behind the commercial motor vehicle and struck it on the side at the rear of the vehicle, both at 5 and 7. Continuing wrong direction examples. So these are both examples of eligible crashes. It would be technically non-preventable, both over the center line crashes and then crossing over the median. Now, honestly, you see the size of that truck, and just looking at these pictures, these are, even if they're not preventable, these are not incidents that you want to occur within your company. So let's knock on wood to make sure nothing happens like that with a non-preventable incident, because it's still not going to be pretty. Continued. Now you're starting to see some examples of some crashes that are not eligible. So for example, and just because, like I said, just because you see them as not being eligible doesn't necessarily mean there's not still an argument here or in another category. So not eligible, so not fully over the center line, as far as that second right, upper second right-hand picture. An opposing direction side swipe where he's not technically all the way over the center line. And then the CMV, commercial motor vehicle, struck in the intersection. So the vehicle that struck the commercial motor vehicle in that lower right-hand corner was traveling in the correct direction and in the correct lane. Honestly, that's going to require some more investigation on that, because both parties were doing what they were supposed to do. One may have had a green light, one may have had a red light. So that's why they can't just say it's eligible right off of the bat. Illegal turns. As you see, 3 out of the 4 of these are eligible. That legal turn in the bottom right-hand corner is, I'm sure some of you on this webinar have had some of these or have some of these within your company, but this is the vehicle that struck the commercial motor vehicle was making a legal turn at the same time of the crash. So kind of back to the example from the previous slide. Both were doing the correct action, and it's going to take a little bit more information to really see what it takes to be non-preventable. And even if you look real closely, the tractor trailer there, if you look at his traffic light, had the green light. So again, it's going to take a little bit more information to figure out if it is actually eligible. Talking about if your commercial motor vehicle is parked. Now it's pretty hard to make an argument if your truck is parked correctly and somebody strikes your vehicle to mean that it would not be eligible. So those are pretty easy arguments to make them eligible as non-preventable. And again, this happens more times than you would think, especially that right picture there being parked on the side of the road, and you see the right caution cones put out. It still happens all the time in regards to what we see. Failure of the other vehicles to stop examples. Now, this one in the left-hand picture looks very similar to one previously that was ineligible. And it's just because it's in a different section and it's a different scenario where the commercial motor vehicle was struck in an intersection by another vehicle that failed to stop at a traffic control device. So that's what gives you more detail in regards to the category of where it needs to be filed, because as you can see, that tractor trailer was doing the correct operation, going through the traffic light on green, and the vehicle that struck it at the intersection obviously did not obey its traffic signal. And then this is an interesting document. This is it's an interesting example. So individual under the influence examples. Obviously, if somebody hit you, you always tend to say if somebody hits you and they were under the influence, it's always easy to put them at fault or put them at blame. But really what I want to focus on is the lack of documentation. just because something may be eligible, you always want to make sure your vehicle, your driver, have the proper documentation on file, because lack of documentation could take something from being eligible to making it not eligible. So in this specific example, the police accident report does not document that the driver that struck the commercial motor vehicle or contributed to the crash was under the influence as documented by an arrest, citation, failed sobriety test, or refusal of test. The big section here that we're going to dive into in regards to making sure an accident was non-preventable was the police accident report. This is going to be something that you are going to need to have when you are filing for a crash to be non-preventable, the police accident report, because this is going to basically be the evidence, almost the third-party evidence of the police that are making their ruling and their judgment within their report that is going to put it over the edge to be non-preventable. So now that you know what's eligible or non-eligible for crashes within being preventable and non-preventable, let's go into best practices for submitting. So now the paperwork starts of how do you submit this to make it on your record as a non-preventable accident. So this is a image that was put together by the FMCSA with the 4 steps. So first, an eligible crash occurs. So after the documents that we just reviewed, as well as that we will give you, it's going to help you determine whether a crash was eligible. Now we have to submit the request. So we submit the request with that police accident report. If we submit the request without it, the chance of it being approved with the outcome you want is going to be slim to none. So step 3, the FMCSA will review this request, and then step 4, the FMCSA will post the final determination on your page within the FMCSA under your company. So taking it to the next step, once you're on the FMCSA website, you're going to go to the specific data queues section. If you don't have a login with your company, you can create it here, or you can just log in from your original login information. And this is where you are going to fill it out. Within the documentation that we are going to provide you guys, it'll also have this link, as well as it's pretty easy to find just from the FMCSA homepage. This is where you're going to start and fill it out and go through that 4-step process that you see there with the same image that we had prior to get this all completed and filled out. So I'm going to go through some details of the Truck Crash Preventability Program. So this is an acronym that you are going to see over and over again within the documentation that we give you, the Crash Preventability Program. Specific details of this. So this program will completely remove crashes determined preventable from a carrier's safety management system prioritization algorithm. That means a carrier's crash indicator basic score will no longer be calculated using non-preventable crashes. So this demonstration program used non-preventable crashes in the calculation, but offered carriers an alternative calculation. So all crashes will still be listed on the FMCSA website, but they will include a notation indicating the crash was reviewed and the result of the review. So crashes deemed not preventable will be noted as such on the driver's pre-employment screening record, or PSP as you'll see it. There was no such notation during the demonstration program that we reviewed earlier. So carriers will be able to request review of all crashes that occurred on or after August 1 of 2019. That's a big piece of information for you guys. If there are any specific crashes that you guys have in mind or that have occurred within your company between August 2019 and now, that is something to think about. If you are thinking it was non-preventable, which from the statistics it most likely was, to file on that data QS section of the FMCSA to make sure it's not affecting you how it would if it was preventable. And if anybody wants to review how to do that and when to do that, we can follow up specifically after, as well as, I know I keep repeating it, it'll be in the documentation that we provide you to be able to utilize with your company. So the FMCSA is streamlining the process by eliminating the 30-day public notice before a review can be finalized. The public can still submit comments, but determinations will not be held up. And then the police accident reports, we focused on that a lot, will be required for all requests for review. They are the single most reliable source for crash information. This has been validated numerous times through research conducted by FMCSA and other institutions. So again, if it's an incident that could be preventable or non-preventable, the police report or police will most likely show up, whether you call them or the opposing party does. So make sure you get the police officer's contact information and you get a hold of that police accident report to make sure you can file if you choose to do so. All right, so we discussed the eligibility of crashes, of what can be preventable and non-preventable. But now let's say you're reviewing 5 incidents that happened in the past year, since August 1 of 2019. And now you're asking yourself, how is this going to impact my business that now 4 out of 5 of those incidents were considered non-preventable? So first up, let's dive into insurance and claims. This is something in regards to if you're operating vehicles over the road, insurance is a big factor of this to make sure you have the right limits depending on the requirements of who is requiring something for filings, as well as if you have a preventable or even a non-preventable incident or crash. Guess what the next thing you're going to do after that crash most likely happened? File a claim. So based off of this history, when an underwriter is quoting your insurance or reviewing something in regards to what your limits or rates are going to be, these scores are reviewed as exposures. So the underwriters are not only just looking at your loss run history, they're going in and reviewing this data as well. How that's going to benefit you is an explanation of, hey, what happened here? And you can say this was non-preventable. That's going to go a long way of saying, yeah, we messed up. That's our driver did that. It's their 5th time doing it. Obviously, it's going to have a factor within calculating liability factors as well. The biggest thing this does with fighting claims, it gives your insurance carrier and your insurance broker a leg to stand on. Like we said, we see these billboards that make the big company the enemy versus the little person, the little old lady in the car. So this gives us a leg to stand on specifically in regards to fighting claims. Very similar to, let's say you have cameras in your trucks that record incidents, as well as let's say you have a police report that says you weren't at fault or that a violation wasn't filed against you. Those are 2 legs, as well as now a 3rd leg is this filing of a non-preventable claim. Those are 3 bullets to put in the gun to go fight that claim that you are not at fault, and potentially your insurance shouldn't pay that claim. Another party should. So those three legs really provides ammunition to put a dog in the fight to make sure you are being taken care of, you're keeping your claims dollars down, and keeping sustainable insurance options for the future. Next point, as far as a benefit for your business, hiring drivers. By seeing a more in-depth information on a driver file within, let's say, the FMCSA or just the report, you are, instead of just saying, okay, he had 5 incidents in the past 5 years, you can dive in and say, well, 4 out of 5 of those were non-preventable. It really makes a driver look more appealing, and it could help you out in regards to getting more information for hiring drivers. And then 3rd, pre-qualification. So within the past, I would probably say 10 to 12 years, pre-qualification has really ramped up, just from being just the paper forms to now being the online compliance platforms like ISN, Avetta, PEC, Browse. So having good scores and being able to distinguish these non-preventable accidents is going to help you in regards to your filing with ISN and your grade within those compliance platforms, as well as the contractor approval. So it'll be able to put a numerical number or something in writing right in front of you to be able to show that, hey, you're able to get on this job site because you're really able to show that this was a non-preventable accident, as well as safety incentives. In regards to driver performance, when it's not their fault, it's pretty hard to put it on them in regards to affecting them if you have safety incentives. So it's another way to make sure that you are incentivizing your employees through, let's say, a safety bonus to make sure they're getting it and not getting cut out for something that they weren't at fault for. Because as you can imagine, it can hurt driver culture a lot if it's something that wasn't their fault and something's getting taken away. So I kept mentioning what we're going to be sending you guys. We put this in our invitation blast as far as what we would have, but as far as detailed, what we'll follow up with everybody with, an eligibility guide. There's that acronym, that Crash Prevention Determination Program. This was those pictures as well as each specific example and category of what will be eligible and what will not be eligible. A frequently asked questions page basically goes through the entire process of what questions could come up, and you'll be able to have that. It might even be good to keep that, give your drivers a copy in case they want to learn more information about that, as well as if there's any other questions, please feel free to ask us, ask your insurance carrier, as well as the third item. We're going to be providing a presentation. The presentation, as well as all of these documents, are also accessible through the FMCSA website. We just want to make sure that you guys get them directly, but the presentation can be utilized. Let's say if you have a training coming up and you want to conduct this with your team. It's your own specific presentation. It's different from the one that we just gave. It goes a lot more in depth with the eligibility guide. You'll be able to give that with your team. And then finally, a fact sheet. The fact sheet's going to summarize these three documents. We have viewed it good as being, let's say, a toolbox talk or a safety meeting documentation piece of information for a Monday safety meeting. So that'll be good to utilize to consolidate the three documents prior to it. So that is all that we have for today on the update. Again, with all of the stuff going on right now, whether COVID-19 or the OPEC oil situation, we view this update coming from the FMCSA as a light of good news, because talk about a way to benefit you in regards to making crashes non-preventable for your record, to make you look a lot more appealing, to get more work and to get more business. I've listed my contact information. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, call me anytime. I'd be more than happy to review all of this stuff with you. And again, thank you for taking the time this afternoon to join us, and we will talk with you all soon.